Today, I wanted to talk about 3 ways narcissists get you to believe that you're the problem. I want to talk about the 3 specific things they do so that we can understand their behavior. But more important than that, I want to talk about what this does to you. The narcissist can be out of our life, and that trauma in our body could keep us stuck and unhappy. And so at some point, we learn about them, but then we start looking within to see what's going on inside. So that being said, let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a survivor myself of narcissistic family systems. I'm now a certified trauma recovery coach. I'm also a somatic experiencing practitioner and the founder of Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where instead of videos, we actually meet live on Zoom and we do the work together to overcome the side effects of trauma, CPTSD, and narcissistic abuse. The first thing that a narcissist loves to do in order to convince you that you are the problem is by their way of provoking you into falling into reactive abuse. Now, I'm sure that's a term you've heard before, but I really want to break it down so that you understand exactly what's going on. Because the thing with reactive abuse is you really are changing. Like you really go from being a person that has a slow fuse to a person that reacts like that. And when you react, you're not yourself. So when you come out of that state of reactive abuse, you look back and you're like, what did I do? What did I say? And it's so quick and easy to start blaming self and to start looking at yourself as if you are the problem. Now, I'm not condoning what happens during reactive abuse, but let's really understand what's going on. So in order to understand it, let's start with the beginning of a relationship with a narcissist. Narcissists do not look for explosive people. They do not look for people that are combative, that have a low fuse. No, that's them, right? They look for somebody that's willing to tolerate their explosive personality. So basically, they look for somebody that is stuck in a fawn trauma response. A fawn response is somebody that suppresses self, suppresses their needs, their wants, their personality, their perspectives in order to make somebody else happy so that they can feel safe. Now, by the way, if you are someone that's stuck in a fawn response, there's no shame in this because a fawn trauma response is created in childhood. Normally, narcissists look for people that have unhealed wounds, unhealed childhood wounds. So how that develops in childhood is you might have had a narcissistic parent or you had some kind of environment where you didn't feel safe to be yourself. And so children can't fight and they can't flee, right? Those are our go-to trauma responses. When something happens, our body wants to fight or get out of there. When you can't do that, your body moves into more of a shutdown or a fawn response. I know with myself, I didn't know that I was stuck in a fawn response. I thought that was my personality. I thought that I was a people pleaser. I put other people's needs before my own. I struggled with boundaries. I felt uncomfortable when people were upset or angry. I didn't realize that those personality traits were actually symptoms of a chronic stuck fawn response. I didn't know that, but malignant narcissists can spot that in people. And so they love to latch on to your childhood wounds because somebody stuck in a fawn response is going to work really, really hard to try to make the narcissist happy because in that trauma response, the goal of being in the fawn response is if I can make you happy, then that creates connection between me and you and a measure of safety. This is the very reason, fawning is the very reason what we wind up tolerating so much from narcissists, especially when we don't know that we're in a fawn response. Narcissists use that to just regulate themselves. Okay, so what does this have to do with reactive abuse? Well, narcissists spot you as somebody that is willing to tolerate them, somebody that's in a fawn response. They may not have the words for it, but they can tell that you suppress you to make them happy. Then you're in a relationship with them. But after a while, that doesn't work for them because when we're in a fawn response and we're trying to make someone else happy, we're kind, we're forgiving, probably overly forgiving. We continue to do our best to make this person happy. And then what happens is they really start to see themselves. They start to see how nasty they are over a period of time. And that doesn't work for them. When a narcissist sees what they don't like in themselves, instead of working on that characteristic, they will flip it onto someone in their family. And it's almost like they look at themselves through the lens of a broken prism. So they start noticing, oh, I'm really angry. And then they provoke the other person to feel angry. And in that broken prism, they're like, oh, I'm not angry, that they are. I'm good, I'm okay. And that's how they regulate their emotions, by provoking in their partner what they don't want to feel. So once they rope you in because you were stuck in a fawn response and that served their purpose, right? Then it starts to get imbalanced. They start using you as an emotional regulator, and now they want you to carry the aggressive emotions that are causing them to look bad. So what happens is when they're angry and they don't want to be, they will provoke you. And when you're stuck in a fawn response, if you're anything like me, you probably had a really big tolerance in the beginning. You probably could tolerate a lot before eventually you exploded, because you're human. And you could only take so much until it became too much for you to handle. And when it became too much for you to handle, what narcissists are doing is they're really working with your nervous system and your trauma responses. So when it became too much, where fawning was no longer allowing you to feel safe, right? To make them happy so that you can have connection and safety. That wasn't working anymore. So your nervous system's like, we're going to try this. And now we're going to fight. So maybe the first time you probably surprised yourself when you fell into reactive abuse. Maybe you exploded. Maybe you threw something. Maybe you said things that you never would have normally said. And the interesting thing that happens is that when you start acting like that, now the narcissist sees themselves in you and they relax. And what happens in you each time you explode and they relax is this is creating an overcoupling in your nervous system, where you exploding is now coupled together and locked in your nervous system with a positive reward, with a meaning that now that's a positive. Exploding is a positive, because when you explode, the narcissist lets up on abuse and it feels good to the nervous system. Again, all of this is happening on a subconscious level. You're not even realizing what's going on underneath. So again, the first thing they do to start getting you to think you're the problem is they start changing you by provoking you into reactive abuse. Even you can see that you're different. And so they use that against you. Like, you used to be so calm, you used to be like this, and now look at you. And of course, they delete all the reasons why, and they put the focus on your behavior. The second thing that happens is once they get you into a state of being able to take you from a fawn response into a fight response, now they do that consistently. The chronic stress that's created and the consistent punishment and rewards for if you're fawning and you're nice and you're kind and now you're punished, and yet you're rewarded when you're exploding, that conditions your body, your nervous system, to actually stay stuck in a fight response. It's like, ooh, this works. This is a better response. Something positive happens when we do this. And once your nervous system now stays stuck in a chronic fight response, here's the sad part, is the narcissist can do less and less and less obvious abuse. It can become more and more covert, more and more subtle, and you will still have a huge reaction because your body is now bracing and ready to respond in the fight response. So that's the second thing that happens, is your nervous system now has a different go-to trauma response. You're now stuck in a chronic fight response. And the last thing that the narcissist will do, as they try desperately to get you to believe that all of the problems are your fault and your fault alone, is they realize that their opinion of you and that it's your fault isn't enough. So they like to compound things. It's not just, I think you're the problem. It's everyone thinks you're the problem. And to get to that place, they wind up setting you up. So they now know that you're in a chronic fight response. In fact, sadly, it's almost a game to them to see how quickly they can get you to explode. Okay, so they know your buttons. They know exactly what to do and say to get you to that point where your fight response takes over. And by the way, when we're stuck in one of our trauma responses, no matter which trauma response it is, we are never our best self. So they now know how to get you to be in that fight response and how quickly it takes to get you there. Now what they do is they purposely cause you to go there in social situations. So for example, let's say you're going out with friends. As you're driving to meet up with your friends, they will make that drive so horrible. They will treat you like such trash that by the time you get there, it's like your body is ringing with the trauma. It's ringing and echoing with all of the pain, anger, frustration, humiliation, confusion, and shock that they are inflicting on you. So you get there in that state, and you probably don't even realize that the second they see just how far they got you into that state of being overworked and traumatized, they relax. They're like a baby that's just been burped. And they're so calm. And people start seeing that. And they might even go up to the narcissist and be like, what's wrong with so-and-so? Like, you're so happy. And he or she is like always so nasty. Like, I can't believe you guys are together still. And at that moment, the narcissist won't say horrible things about you. They'll be like, well, you know, they have an anger problem, but I care and I'm so willing to help him or her. And, you know, I'm just trying my best to be there for them and help them, right? It's all about, I'm the victim of this horrible person's personality, but I'm going to take the high road and really try to help. And when they do that, people believe it because they're seeing the narcissist happy and you look a mess. I looked a mess. And that's what people believed. And once other people start telling you how amazing this other person is, and you get angry and you try to show them the truth from a state of anger, because guess what? When you hear how amazing this other person is, that's going to activate your fight response. And so you're not going to be thinking clearly. You're going to come from a state of overwhelm, of irritation, of disbelief, of shock. And how it comes out, it only makes them believe what the narcissist says. So those are the 3 things that narcissists do to get you to look like, to believe, and to convince others that you are the problem and they're the victim. If this resonates with you and you're stuck in this web, I want to give you a couple of tips that can help. But I'm not going to lie. Some of these tips are tips that we're not prone to wanting to do. And I say this because when I first heard them, I was like, oh God, it's got to be something else. After all, the narcissist is the one that inflicted all of these changes in me. So something that has to do with them, me learning about them, is what's going to heal me. And that's not the case. Narcissistic abuse causes the trauma. Your nervous system becomes traumatized, but then the narcissist can stay relief. You could be out of all toxic relationships and your traumatized nervous system stays traumatized until you start learning how to work through the trauma. Some of it has to do with learning about the narcissist and putting the pieces together, for sure. But you can learn about the narcissist until you feel like you have a degree in Narcology 101 and still feel stuck and suffering from the abuse, because eventually we have to work with our body and what happened to us as a result of their actions. So here are a few tips that can help. One of the back doors into your nervous system is through your breathing. So what I mean by that is when a narcissist is constantly keeping you walking on eggshells, right? We know that phrase very well. What that basically means, when we say we're walking on eggshells, means we are never relaxed. It means our nervous system, the alarm system in our body, is like this 24/7 looking for danger. As a result, that changes our breathing. We wind up either holding our breath or breathing very shallow from the chest. And so in order for our body to start healing, we have to rewire it again. I say again because the narcissist rewired you. And now we have to rewire it again so that we can be more in our parasympathetic state, in our rest and digest instead of our fight or flight. Something else that helps is that walking on eggshells that keeps us 24/7 on high alert and stuck in hypervigilance. We have to teach our nervous system that we don't have to do that anymore. That doesn't go away with time. And so we have to find moments for glimmers, we call them, of safety. We have to teach our body, we have to retrain our body to know what a felt sense of safety feels like again. And then the third tip is we have to start working with the overcouplings that are in our nervous system. The stories, the pairs of topics that the narcissist welded together in your nervous system that don't belong together. Like, if I yell and scream, that's a good thing. So we have to work with our overcouplings. And the last tip that I want to give you is that we have to start teaching our nervous system the difference between real danger and perceived danger. And what I mean by that is with narcissistic abuse, remember I said that narcissistic abuse or narcissists love to put their hooks in your unhealed trauma. So the thing with unhealed trauma and trauma in the present is oftentimes what we're going through in the present wakes up things from the past and meshes them together. And when they're meshed together, there's no time. So for example, let's say the narcissist gives me the silent treatment in the present, right? And let's say I grew up with a parent that as a little kid that ignored me and that gave me the silent treatment. Well, when I was a child, a parent ignoring you and giving you the silent treatment feels life or death because who's going to take care of you, right? So it becomes that behavior. That's a paired association that the silent treatment means I could die because who's going to take care of me? Well, when the narcissist gives you the silent treatment in the present and it wakes up what that means from the past, suddenly you feel like that behavior of the narcissist feels life or death. It feels like your life is really in danger when it's really perceived threat. But trauma causes our nervous system to get confused with real threat and perceived threat. And we have to retrain our nervous system to notice that there's a difference. There's a difference between somebody getting mad at me and my life being on the line. But when you have a traumatized nervous system, it feels the same. And when it feels the same, because that's intense, like my life is on the line, our body goes into a trauma response. So instead of handling the stress from the adult we start handling the stress from the survival brain and from the unhealed pieces of us that feel like their life is in danger. And over in those pieces of our brain and those pieces of us that are unhealed, again, we are never our best self. We are our wounded self. Think about an animal that's super loving. Let's say you have this dog, it's such a loving dog, but it's been in an accident and now it's in pain and you go to pet that dog is gonna lash out at you in a protective fight response. That animal is reacting from the trauma. That happens with us. And if we don't heal that, we wind up hurting the people in our lives. We wind up staying stuck, feeling as if we're suffering from narcissistic abuse. So I know that I threw those tips out there. It does take time to really learn how to embody those tips. And for that reason, I want to invite you to take a look at Thriver School of Transformation because we meet live on Zoom and we do the inner work to break free of the suffering of narcissistic abuse, to break free out of feeling stuck in our trauma responses so that we could finally either get back to who we really are or in many cases to discover who we really are. It's been a powerful resource for so many survivors of narcissistic abuse, so come check us out.